Hey there, Algebra 2 students. Welcome back to Miss McGuire's classroom. Today we're going to be doing Unit 5, Lesson 2. Our topic is adding and subtracting rational expressions. And don't forget to put your first and last name, the period, and the date in the upper right-hand corner of your paper. Your objective today is I will add and subtract rational expressions as well as state any restrictions on the variable. Mastery will be demonstrated by scoring at least an 80% on the extra practice. So what we did in our last lesson was we took a rational expression, a polynomial in the numerator and in the denominator, and we simplified them as far as we could. Today we're going to take two different rational expressions with polynomials in the numerator and denominators, and we're going to add them and combine them into one, or we're going to subtract them. We're going to take two rational expressions and combine them into one rational expression through addition or subtraction. So before we do that though, I just want to remind you what it's like to add and subtract with fractions. So we have 1/2 plus 4/3, and we need to add them. So to be able to add fractions though, we have to have a common denominator. And right now our denominators are 2 and 3, which aren't the same. To find our least common denominator, you can take each denominator and just multiply by the other. So like 2 times 3 would be 6. But for the sake of this lesson, it's not really worth multiplying that and using that 6. We're just going to use 2 times 3. So to make these denominators the same, I take the first fraction and I multiply it by the numerator and the denominator by what it's missing in our LCD. So our LCD is 2 times 3. This denominator has a 2 and it's missing the 3. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3. For the other fraction, 4/3, it has a 3, but it's missing the 2 in the 2 times 3 for our LCD. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. So 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, 3 times 2 is 6. Now our denominators are the same. So I can go ahead and add the numerators. So 3 plus 8 is 11, and we get 11/6 as our final answer. All right, so example 2, or part B, sorry. I want you to do the same steps. So 7/5 minus 1/8, find the LCD, multiply each fraction by what it's missing from that LCD, and then simplify. So press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your work. So for my least common denominator, I used 5 times 8. The first fraction is missing the times 8 in its denominator, so I multiplied the numerator and the denominator by 8. The second fraction was missing the times 5, so I multiplied by 5. I got 56/40 minus 5/40, which is 51/40. And because we're in Algebra 2, or in high school math, it's okay to leave your fractions as what this would be called an improper fraction. It's okay for the numerator to be bigger than the denominator. It's all good. So leave your answer like that. All right, so let's talk about our steps for adding and subtracting rational expressions. So we're going to be taking, like if you look at example 2, part A, we're going to be taking x over x minus 1 plus 2x minus 1 over x squared minus 3x plus 2. So I'm going to give you 3 kind of easy steps to follow for every time you have to add or subtract your rational expressions. So step 1 is to factor and find a common denominator. So the first thing you always want to do with rational expressions is just factor them as much as possible. So factor and find the least common denominator, that LCD. Then step 2 is you want to multiply the denominator and numerator of each rational expression by what's missing from that common denominator. And I'll show you what that means in just a minute, but trust me for now. So multiply the numerator and denominator by what's missing from the LCD. And we actually just did that in our previous example. This denominator was missing the times 3, so we multiplied it by the times 3. This denominator was missing the times 2 from the LCD, so we multiplied it by the 2. So that's what step 2 is talking about. Multiply it by what's missing. Then step 3 is to go ahead and do the actual addition or subtraction, add or subtract, and then you have to simplify. And then as always, you also have to state the restrictions on the variable. What is X or Y or whatever the variable is, what is it not allowed to be? All right, so let's put these steps to use. So for example 2, part A, step 1 was to factor everything that we possibly can and find the LCD. So X over X minus 1 can't be factored further. 2X minus 1 can't be factored, but then X squared minus 3X plus 2, let's factor that. So X times X would get us X squared, 2 times 1 would get us 2, and then negative 2 and negative 1 would get that negative 3, X in the middle. All right, so what should our LCD be? So our LCD is, let's see, our LCD needs to include both factors, or sorry, both, everything that's in each denominator is what I'm trying to say. So like this denominator has X minus 1. So our LCD has to include X minus 1. Then this denominator includes X minus 1, but it also has X minus 2. So our LCD also needs to include X minus 2. And you only have to include each factor once. So because X minus 1, actually here, let me color code that. Because our LCD already included X minus 1, we only list it one time, even though it's in both of the denominators. So now step 2, multiply the rational expression, the numerator and the denominator, by what it's missing from the LCD. So for X over, X minus 1, it's missing the X minus 2. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by X minus 2. For 2X minus 1 over X minus 2 times X minus 1, it already has both of these pieces, both of the factors from the LCD. So we don't need to multiply it by anything, which is kind of nice. How lovely. All right. So then let's go ahead and add. So we have X, oh, you know what? I need to put this in parentheses. Okay, there we go. So we're gonna have X times X minus 2 plus 2X minus 1. And we wanna put that in parentheses over, and then our denominators are now the same. So I can put that in my denominator. It's X minus 1 times X minus 2. Now let's go up here. So now we need to simplify this as much as possible for our last step. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna come back up here and I'm gonna have X times X and X times negative 2. So X squared minus 2X, positive times 2X and negative 1 is just positive 2X minus 1, all over X minus 1 times X minus 2. So then negative 2X, positive 2X cancels. We have X squared minus 1 all over X minus 1 times X minus 2. And you might think to yourself, well, hey, we're done now. We're actually not. This can be simplified further because remember how with rational expressions, we need to factor everything as much as possible? This X squared minus 1 is a difference of squares, so it can be factored further. It factors to X minus 1 times X plus 1 all over X minus 1 times X minus 2. Well, X minus 1 divided by X minus 1 is just 1. So 1 I need to come back up here. So x minus 1, sorry, 1 times x plus 1 is x plus 1 over, and then we have x minus 2 in the denominator. But again, we have to state all of our restrictions. So what is x not allowed to be in this expression? Well, it can't be whatever makes x minus 2 0. So it can't be positive 2. It can't be whatever makes x minus 1 0, because that was in the denominator, so it can't be 1. I have to look at all my denominators. I already took care of minus 2 and minus 1. Minus 1, minus 2. It looks like those are the only things that are in all these denominators, so we're good with those two restrictions. And that's our final answer. X plus 1 over x minus 2 with the restrictions that x can't be 2 and 1. All right, so let's do part B. So for part B, I'm going to walk you through each step. So our first step is to factor everything and then find our LCD. So x plus 1 over x minus 1 can't be factored. Negative 2 can't be factored. And then x squared minus x can be factored. So x minus x, 1, x times x minus 1. All right, now you tell me, what would our least common denominator be? Remember, your LCD has to include all of the factors, include all of the factors from each denominator. So give that a shot real quick. So our least common denominator would be x times x minus 1. So now you need to multiply the first fraction by what is missing in the least common denominator. So this fraction is missing the x in the x times x minus 1 LCD. So I need to multiply the top and the bottom by x. Notice I put these guys in parentheses because I need to multiply that whole part by x. The second fraction isn't missing anything from the LCD, so we don't have to multiply it by anything extra. There's no extra step for that. All right, so now go ahead and add these two rational expressions. We have the same denominator now, x times x minus 1. Go ahead and add them and then simplify that numerator. All right, so as you can see, I got x times x plus 1 plus negative 2 all over x times x minus 1. So now we need to simplify that numerator. So I'm going to multiply x times x times 1. I get x squared plus x, and then plus negative 2 is just minus 2, all over x times x minus 1. Then we need to see if we can factor the numerator, and if we can we simplify any pieces of this? And then we need to state our restrictions. So why don't you go ahead and try to factor that numerator, see if you can simplify this problem further and state your restrictions on your own. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your work. So I found that x squared plus x minus 2 factored to x plus 2 times x minus 1. Then x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 became 1. X plus 2 times 1 is just x plus 2, and then over x. And x can't be 0, and it can't be positive 1. Hopefully our answers match. All right, so I walked you through that one. So why don't you try doing part C all on your own? So remember, you need to factor everything you can factor, find your LCD, multiply by what each denominator is missing, and then simplify. Factor again, simplify further, state your restrictions, all that good stuff. All right, good luck with this problem. All right, so I found that my LCD was x minus 2 times x plus 2. The first fraction isn't missing any piece of that least common denominator, so I left it alone. The second one, though, is missing the x minus 2, so I multiplied the numerator and the denominator by that x minus 2 piece. Then, because my denominators are now the same, I went ahead and added the numerators. So I got x plus 1 times x minus 2 all over x minus 2 times x plus 2. So now we need to simplify from there. So we're going to distribute that 1. So we have x plus x minus 2 all over x minus 2 times x plus 2. X plus x is 2x. So we have 2x minus 2 with the same denominator. Then 2x minus 2 has a GCF of 2. We can factor that out. And then we get that. And it looks like nothing is going to simplify. So we want to leave our answer in that factored form. That's how I have taught you to do that. Photomath has you multiply it back out, which is one way I know when you use Photomath. So don't do that. And then our restrictions are x can't be 2 and negative 2. All right. Okay, so now let's do some subtraction. So subtraction follows the same steps, but there's just one different part. And I'll point that out as we go. So in part A here, in x plus 2 over x squared minus 2x, we can factor out an x in this denominator, so x times x minus 2. And then x plus 2, we can factor out a 2 from 2 and 4, so 2 and x minus 2. So then our least common denominator needs to include an x, it needs to include an x minus 2, it needs to include a 2, and it needs to include x minus 2, which it already has, so we're good on that. So notice my LCD has 3 parts this time. It has to include the 2, the x, and the x minus 2. Well, 2x is really, x times x minus 2 times 2 is really 2x times x minus 2. Okay, so we multiply each rational expression by what it's missing from the LCD. So x plus 2 over x times x minus 2 is missing the 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 in the first one. Then the second one, let's see, is missing the x. So I'm going to multiply by x. And notice I'm putting things in parentheses because when I multiply this numerator by x, I have to multiply the 2 and the x by the x. I have to multiply the x and the 2 by the 2. So those parentheses remind me to multiply everything in the numerator by that. So let's do this. So we're going to have 2 times x plus 2, which is 2x plus 2. But for the second part of this fraction here, this part right here, we're subtracting it. So we're going to have minus x times x plus 2. And all I did was I brought that x to the front because order doesn't matter with multiplication. So x plus 2 times x is the same thing as x times x plus 2. And then I kept that negative in front of it. Then our denominator is 2 times x minus 2 times x, which is 2x times x minus 2. So this time we have to distribute this negative x. So we're going to have 2x plus 2 minus x squared minus 2x all over 2x times x minus 2. I'm going to draw a line and come up here so I can keep working down. 2x minus 2x cancels. And we have negative x squared plus 2 all over 2x times x minus 2. In my numerator, I'm going to factor out that negative, and I get x squared minus 2 all over 2x times x minus 2. X squared minus 2 is not a difference of squares, so we're just going to leave it like it is. And there we go. We just state our restrictions. X can't be, this would be 0. 2 would make that 0. So x can't be 0 and 2. And there's our final answer. All right. Now let's try part B. So I'm going to walk you through this one just like I did before. So we have x plus 3 over x minus 2 minus 6x minus 7 over All right, I want you to factor that denominator, and then I want you to tell me what the least common denominator would be for this problem. All right, go ahead and give that a shot on your own. All right, so I factored that denominator to x minus 2 times x minus 1. My least common denominator then would be x minus 2 times x minus 1. Okay, so now we're going to multiply each one by what it's missing. So x plus 3, oh my goodness, that's a 3, over x minus 2, and then minus 6x minus 7 over x minus 2 times x minus 1. So this first fraction is missing the x minus 1 component, so we're going to need to multiply it by that. The second fraction isn't missing anything in the denominator, so we're done with it. Now in the next step, we're going to take x plus 3 times x minus 1, and we're going to subtract. Now you have to put parentheses because you're subtracting this whole numerator. So subtract parentheses 6x minus 7 all over x minus 2 times x minus 1. Now this problem takes a little extra effort, but it's not too bad. We're going to have to distribute this x and this 3, and then simplify that numerator, and then factor as much as we can. You're going to have to distribute that negative, factor if you can, simplify what you can, state your restrictions. Go ahead and finish this without me. See how far you can get on your own. All right, so I multiplied that out. I got x squared plus 3x minus x minus 3 minus 6x plus 7, which simplified to x squared minus 4x plus 4, which factored to x minus 2 times x minus 2. X minus 2 divided by itself is 1, so I was left with x minus 2 over x minus 1, and x can't be 2 or 1. So hopefully our answers match. All right, so why don't you go ahead and give part C a shot all on your own. See if you can do this problem without me. Good luck. So I figured out that my least common denominator would need to be x plus 5 times x plus 1. Because the second fraction's denominator factored to x plus 5 times x plus 1. They both include x plus 5, and so I just needed to add the x plus 1 into the LCD. So then the first fraction is the only one that needed to change. So I multiplied the top and the bottom by the missing piece, which was x plus 1. So then I got x minus 1 times x plus 1 minus, and then I put x plus 3 in parentheses because I can't forget to distribute that negative. And then all over x plus 5 times x plus 1. Then I had to multiply out the x minus 1 times the x plus 1, so I just did a bunch of distribution. I got x squared plus x minus 1. I distributed the negative. I got negative x minus 3. I combined all my like terms. I got x squared minus x minus 4. And that cannot be factored. So I'm done with that step. And then I just listed my restrictions that x can't be 5 and it can't be, negative 5 and it can't be negative 1. So hopefully our answers match. Good work today. So now you're going to do your extra practice. When you're done with it, make sure you hit the ask for help button so I can jump in and go over your answer with you. Keep up the good work. I'll see you back in class.